There are a lot of mysterious and interesting ancient buildings around the world, especially ones that we don't exactly know when they were built and who they were built by. One of the most famous ones is the Great Pyramids in Egypt. There are more than 1,000 stories on who built these and when they were built, but these are just theories because we're not 100% sure when they were built and who built them. Some say ancient aliens built them, some say gods built them, and many other stories. Another interesting structure we don't know much about is Stonehenge in Britain. It's not extremely special, but the most interesting part is that makes it mysterious is that this stone you see right here isn't found in this area. They each weigh 25 tons. So whoever built this structure, they transported these extremely heavy stones for hundreds of miles. Another interesting thing is that who lifted these extremely heavy stones? They must have had some type of special tool to lift it efficiently because people weren't gonna do that. We're not 100% sure why the Stonehenge was built, but a lot of people say that it's an ancient form of calendar to keep track of the seasons. Another famous example is Easter Island. And just like every one of these historical buildings or structures that we're naming, we don't know who built these and when they were built either. But these structures we're talking about is not today's video. We want to talk about an ancient temple. And this structure, exactly like the other ones, is very mysterious and we truly don't know its origins. This is the Kailasa Temple. The Kailasa Temple is located in the western part of the Maharashtra state, and of course it's a Hindu temple. The most interesting part about this temple is that it was not built but carved, which makes it even more impressive. Or in theory, you could say they started off with a mountain and they carved their way into this beautiful structure you see. And the reason the color is black, it's not because it was painted, but the stone is basalt, and that's why it gives this dark color to it. So basically, before they started carving, it was just a piece of the mountain. And the most impressive part is that from day one, they had to be extremely careful not to make a mistake, because if you make a mistake, it's all over. Just imagine you're building something. If you make a mistake, you could destroy it and rebuild it better again. But with something like this where you have to carve out the mountain, there is no room for mistake. It has to be done perfectly the first time. Another thing that makes this temple very mysterious is that archaeologists and historians don't know when exactly this temple was built, and they don't know who built it. Of course, it's always been a Hindu temple, but Hinduism is an extremely old religion, and you really can't just put a date on it. Some like to estimate that it's more than 1500 years old, but other historians say that number doesn't mean anything because nothing in this temple shows us the age of it. There is no writing that says where it was made or when it was made. And since Hinduism is 5,000 years old, you really can't just estimate. If it was like a Christian temple, you could say at least it was made in the last 2,000 years. But for something like this, you really can't guess. After historians and engineers examine this location, they estimate that the workers had to dig out more than 500,000 tons of basalt out of here. And that's just the amount of stone that was taken out. Just imagine the time that was spent to carve all that out. All this was done with ancient engineering, ancient tools, and ancient knowledge on how things are supposed to be carved out. And damn, we are impressed, because you really can't find people that would be able to do this today. Another thing that makes the Kailasa Temple extremely impressive is that when it was examined millimeter by millimeter, they realized that there was literally no mistakes. And the missing pieces or the things that look like it's incomplete or a mistake was made is not because a mistake was made, but because that piece broke off. That's the only imperfection you can find in this temple. So when it was actually new, there was literally zero errors. And that's probably the most amazing part. Another thing that the Kailasa Temple lucked out on is that its location. It wasn't located in the middle of the way where different empires, different armies would pass by. So there was a low chance of it being destroyed like other temples in other countries, even in India. Because if an army comes through your location, if they see a temple that they don't like, they will most likely destroy it. But the Kailasa Temple was located in a place where it was kind of hidden by these enemies. So that's why it survived all these years without being destroyed. Good examples of beautiful cities getting destroyed is like Baghdad, Persepolis, or Ctesiphon. They were in a major area, and whenever the enemy showed up to those locations, if they could, they would destroy that city. Of course, to begin this project, it seems like that they started from the top layer and they made their way down instead of going into it. When you look at this structure from above or from a distance, you realize that it's so organized and serious engineering and measuring went into it before they began the project. It wasn't something where you can just do trial and error. Just like we said, there was zero room for error. You could kind of compare it to the Great Pyramid of Giza, where every piece had to be so perfect, so when you get to the tippity top, there is no mistake. But we should never forget that all these structures we're mentioning were built by humans. A lot of people like to theorize that ancient aliens or some ancient mysterious creature built them. That wasn't the case. It was all done by humans, and it's only possible when you have a lot of money on the line. Structures like the Great Pyramids or Pasargad in Iran are built with limestone, an extremely hard stone that you could easily work with so you can carve it into the shape you like. But basalt is not like that. It's a very hard rock, and when you're very hard, you're also very brittle. So the chances of breaking is higher than any other stone. And as you know, the harder the stone is, the easier it breaks. Like for example, diamond being the hardest stone, it is also very brittle, but it's so hard that it could literally cut glass with ease. These tiny elephants you see around the structure is very interesting because it makes it seem like the entire structure is on the back of these elephants. And if you're not familiar with Hinduism, you know that the elephant is a very special animal, and they also play an important role in this temple. In the surroundings of the Kailasa Temple, there are other structures as well, and there's also tunnels, but it seems like the surrounding ones are somewhat incomplete. Maybe in the middle of the project, something happened where they had to give up. And that's another thing that adds to how mysterious this place is. What took place for the workers to stop working on it? You can find a lot of Sanskrit writings in this temple, and all the writings never mentions when this structure was built or who built it. And that's the reason it remains a mystery. And we mentioned this plenty of times. In the Great Pyramid, there is no writing either on when or who built it. An interesting thing that adds to the engineering of the Kailasa Temple is that how the water is captured, and it just doesn't drip like other ancient buildings. So basically, engineers routed the water to not drip in certain locations where people can walk around the temple. And as you know, this part of India always likes to rain. So routing the water correctly so it doesn't drip on people was a huge deal. But in one part of the temple, there is some parts that the water stay, and it's those caves that they built. And right now, as we speak, it's underwater. So the caves are filled up. And that's why they send scuba divers to examine the underwater caves to see if they can find any clues. You might be familiar with Shiva, one of the most important gods you hear about in Hinduism. Some Hindus believe that this is Shiva's temple. But this video isn't about any type of religion. We're just talking about the amazing engineering facts about the Kailasa Temple because it is truly a marvel. From the ancient 7 wonders of the world, there is only one of them that remain, and that's the Great Pyramid of Giza. And the other 6 have been destroyed, or what some like to call it, a myth. And that's why now we have the new 7 wonders of the world: Great Wall of China, Petra, Colosseum, Chichen Itza, Machu Picchu, Taj Mahal, and Christ the Redeemer in Brazil. A lot of people believe that the 8th wonder of the world should be the Kailasa Temple, and it's something that's mysterious and it truly deserves it. What do you guys think?